Eurovision's national final season is over. All of the songs have been selected, and that means we have a few traditions to go through. One of them is this, my yearly tier list of every single national final that has taken place over the last few months. This was the very first video I ever made in 2023, and 2.5 years and 56,000 subscribers later, I still look forward to doing this one every year. I'm also looking forward to telling you about today's sponsor and longtime enabler of my nonsense, Surfshark VPN. Seriously though, I've been traveling a lot during Eurovision season, and Vienna is still to come, so it's nice to know I'll be able to continue to watch the same series on Netflix or wherever else as I am at home, and access series that are available elsewhere but not in the UK. I've literally had Surfshark enabled on my phone and my laptop the entire time I've been away, and it's been a lifesaver. With Surfshark, you can quickly switch between 4,500 servers in more than 140 locations, so you've always got a fast and responsive connection. And they're high speed, so you won't have to deal with buffering either. If you're in the US, for example, you can use Surfshark to watch recent Eurovision shows on YouTube, where they are usually not available, and instead paywalled on Peacock. You can also watch back any region-locked national finals by selecting the relevant country. Surfshark also has the added benefit of letting you use the internet without being legally required to hand over your literal ID documents to random companies and just hope they don't lose it. It protects your activity from their prying eyes as well as everyone else's. With data companies and corporations gathering as much data as they possibly can about us, Surfshark gives you peace of mind by blocking ads and trackers, as well as keeping all of your web activity anonymous. I can't recommend Surfshark enough, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk if you decide at the end that it's not for you. Go to surfshark.com/ESCGabe or use code ESCGabe at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Now it's time to do our yearly definitive ranking of every single national selection in Europe. As always, I've randomized the order with the exception of one that I've deliberately left to the end. This year, the lucky one first up is San Marino. I used to find this show very funny. I remember once describing this as essentially a cash grab scheme to extract money every year from gullible idiots in order to fund the show's production and get some money in the bank for Eurovision as well. This year, it is still that, but I find myself not feeling the same way. For context, all 800 plus applicants to this show have to pay a €150 fee to access the casting stage. That's an instant windfall for the organisers of €120,000. 240 of those then qualify for an intermediate stage before the semi-finals, where the rules are a little unclear but suggest that they have to pay another 150, and then only 40 of those go to the semi-finals. I'm not sure how well it sits with me that this enormous volume of money is taken from people, most of whom have absolutely zero chance of getting anywhere in the process, and many of whom also end up self-funding travel to San Marino, which then costs significantly more. It just doesn't feel right. It feels like a lot of these people are being sold a dream that in reality is totally impossible. In addition to that, if you're one of the 10 out of 800 that make it to the actual final, you'll find yourself being inevitably bulldozed by one or more of the big artists who are parachuted into the competition at that stage. This year it was Senate and an AI-generated depiction of Boy George on the screen behind her. This is also, conveniently, the act that will have the resources to pay for everything at Eurovision themselves, without the broadcaster needing to do much of anything. Overall, this is a show that I guess makes business sense, but it doesn't make sense as a national selection. It's a laboured exercise in extracting money from people before essentially internally selecting at the end anyway. That's how things have panned out in 3 of the last 4 years. This has come close to F tier, which would have been an abysmal way to start, but I've just held it in D, because it is genuinely entertaining in parts, and there are things that are much worse here. At the same time though, it just doesn't sit right with me anymore. Moving on, we're going to the next door neighbour of Italy. Sanremo is many things, one of which is a sort of national selection for Eurovision, though the winner doesn't have to go. And over time, I've become less needlessly contrarian about it, given it is literally the oldest ongoing music show on TV anywhere in Europe. In terms of cultural significance within the country in question, Italy and I guess maybe Sweden stand alone. More than 14 million people watch Sanremo in Italy each year. It's a way bigger deal than Eurovision there, and there's typically a laundry list of superstars who want to participate every single time. It produces a whole swathe of hits too, and the songs from this show dominate the charts in Italy for weeks afterwards. The foundations are stronger than any, and the significance of the show has to be respected. That said, it's not going to change the fact that for me, I have always lacked the ability to sit for somewhere between 4 and 9 hours 5 nights in a row for shows that run way over time every single time. In addition to that, it is always absolutely heaving with ballads, and they are good ballads, but there's still way too many of them. This year had some real highlights, and Ditonella Piaga was one of my top 10 songs of the entire national final season. Sal Da Vinci was a really fun winner as well. At the same time, I'm never going to perfectly gel with this, and nor do I really need to. Maturity has helped me realize that in the eyes of Sanremo, we are the side piece, and they are the main event. I respect that on some level, and I respect this show, so I'm going to put it in A tier for now. Now it's Norway's turn. This is one of the saddest stories of any national selection in recent years, in my opinion, because it's been out of sorts for a while. This year was the worst one yet in this recent slump. We entered it already amid a cloud of controversy, with Ylvis of What Does the Fox Say fame withdrawing from consideration in protest against Israel's continued participation in Eurovision. With that seemed to go the Norwegian broadcaster's entire plan. All of a sudden, you had an underpowered field of mostly anonymous names, plus Alexander Rybak, who seemed to have been brought in at the last moment, because there is no way that his song Rise was anything other than an album track that just happened to meet the requirements. I have a hard time believing that someone who has won this show twice with clear and very deliberate efforts would do something as throwaway as this. Maybe this is tinfoil hat nonsense, who knows? Anyway, in addition to that, the other apparent frontrunner was Marcus and Martinez's sister Emma, who arrived to this stage at a way too early point in her life and career. They were kind of half saved by eventual winner Jonas Love's really good live vocal, but this show looked like it was going to be a total mess ahead of time. At least the production know-how of the Norwegians made it slick like usual and made things run smoothly. That made some of the songs feel at least a little serviceable. Norway needs to totally rethink their approach to song selection. Right now, this is a show that is a spectacle, sure, but the underlying song quality is totally gone. A widespread boycott of the show by Norwegian artists in protest against Israel is definitely part of the reason, but this malaise set in before that happened, and it would be a cop-out to blame it on that alone. Norway goes in C tier for now, but it's in serious danger of dropping further if something doesn't change fast. Next up is Austria, a show so bad that it prompted a whole video from me of soul searching, both about them and their neighbour and partner in crime, Germany, which was imminently, at the time this show took place, about to make many of the same mistakes. This show took an exceptionally long time to get anywhere at all, with 12 songs being stretched out over 3 hours. If you're the Italians, you can get away with this. If you're a half-baked side quest of the Austrian broadcaster, who is understandably and obviously way more focused on hosting Eurovision itself, then you can't. Why even bother producing something of this poor quality? Most of the songs had no kind of staging whatsoever, no dancers, no choreo, nothing, making it abundantly clear that a field of artists mostly made up of amateurs with limited experience were totally left to their own devices. They were given zero support, zero guidance, and zero resource. I feel really sorry for all of them that they were let down by the broadcaster like they were. Thankfully, the right song won this in the form of Tanzschein by Cosmo, but please never bring this format back again. We don't need judging panels and early 2010s talent show style productions. It's tacky, it's pointless, and it's a waste of time. F tier is an obvious placement for this, and God bless you, Cosmo, for somehow surviving it. Now we're moving on to Denmark, and after years of being clowned on by the entire Eurovision fandom, they made something that was actually unironically genuinely good. Though I do find it very amusing that the one time they get their shit together, they hosted the show in a concert hall in a town of 22,000 people in the middle of nowhere. In all seriousness, I can't remember the last time we had a Danish show with 3 viable options, much less one where one of those was well enough presented to shoot straight into contention to win the entire contest. That's a big success for Søren Topegard Lund, as we've discussed at length here before, but it's also a success for the Danish production team, who enabled this hype by delivering on his vision and the vision of other artists in a professional and slick way. While their neighbours to the direct north and south are in shambles, it finally feels like a step forward has been taken, and the momentum that Sissal gave Denmark in 2025 is being put to good use. Let's hope things continue this way, because if they do, we could be seeing a whole new selection here. I might not have expected this in advance, but it's a well-deserved B tier for the Danes. Long may this continue. Continuing with countries who seem to be doing it right at the moment, Latvia is next, and seem keen to maintain their status as the edgy kid of the Baltics. The Latvian music scene is really unique, and that does shine through in this show. Even though the broadcaster only hosts this in a relatively small studio, it pays off, in my opinion, in this case, because it's a room they're familiar with and make the most of. The stagings were really nicely done here, with the obvious highlight being Kaut Kylie and Teon Tagad, but a lot of other highlights there as well. This is something that usually falls away when you have smaller broadcasters, which makes this particularly creditable. The variation and overall strength across that field in terms of song quality extended well beyond what we've been discussing here before as well. That goes from Jay's favourite, Chrissy, who unfortunately finished last, to Takasha Sakama's 010126 Coda. If you produce a show this unique and run it to a high standard, you deserve credit. So that's what Latvia is going to get here. Especially in the last few years, it's really started producing qualification contenders again. And Tauta Meitas' victory in the semi-final last year, notwithstanding blatant manipulation of the vote from elsewhere, was the clearest indication yet that this is a country getting stuff right. I'm not sure how likely a victory contender is to emerge from Latvia's national selection just because they do still have limited resources. But more qualifications are certain in the near future, hopefully including this year. It's an A tier for Latvia, and this is one I really want to attend, so hopefully I'll be there either in 27 or 28. Serbia is next, and like the Latvians, they have a small studio at the broadcaster's HQ, which they use every year. That breeds familiarity and usually a good knowledge of what is and isn't technically possible. When you have limited resources, this is good practice, and the same is true here. I was pretty pessimistic in advance of the show because none of the studio versions really spoke to me except for Fräulein by Brad Pellin. That's why I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the live show and enjoyed a lot of the songs. In addition to Brad Pellin, winners Lavina were exceptional, and a series of other songs had massive upgrades too. I should also pay tribute to the disaster bops, one being Zaina and her decision to become a helicopter, and the other being Trampolina by Bella.
Trampolina, boing, bye bye dream.
Last year, Serbia had one of the biggest downgrades we've seen for a while. This year, a recovery has been made. We're still very far from the giddy heights of 2022, especially in 23 and 24, but at least it's not a disaster this time, and good things have come out of it. B tier is where it will go for today, and hopefully this momentum will continue into next year. We've already talked about a couple of disasters in this video, and it's time for another one in the form of Germany. Big Five countries don't really have much excuse when it comes to national selections. They have the biggest music markets to draw from, and the biggest audience to advertise to. And to be honest, I'm done making excuses for those who don't live up to the standard. Germany is sadly one of those. There's no way on earth that this lineup was a good representation of the breadth and quality of the German music industry. It's one of the biggest and most commercially successful in the non-English speaking world. For that reason, you simply cannot have a show as bad as this. Everything felt tired, from the presentation to the songs to the eventual winner, and there's no sign we're going to be getting anything better for the next few years. A broadcaster with resources like those available to the Germans should be ashamed of producing something this poor. The German broadcaster spends more money in a day than the Moldovans do in a year, so the fact that those shows could even be compared to each other in quality is a disgrace. We'll come on to Moldova in a minute, by the way. I'm not expecting Sanremo or Melody Festival in here, but to be frank, if the Finns can magic up a world-class show in 5 years from basically dead start, with a fraction of the personnel and a fraction of the money, there is no excuse for Europe's biggest economy and one of their best-funded broadcasters to not be able to do the same. I haven't even mentioned the ridiculous jury-only system, with the public only being given a say when the final 3 songs are chosen. Sort it out or scrap it entirely, because right now it's an embarrassment. This is going down to F tier with Austria, and it doesn't belong anywhere else. When you're a country the size and stature of Germany, the bar is higher. And yet, you have not just failed to clear it. You're on the floor. You're digging underneath the high jump. Let's move on to Albania, which is next, and are thankfully doing a much better job. The last couple of years have been pretty good for their selection, Festivali I Kenges. It does have the Sanremo problem of taking a very long time, but it is also a cultural tradition, just like Sanremo, so I can forgive it. One of Albania's signatures, just like Sanremo, is the presence of a live orchestra. This was the first year where it felt like an attempt was made to integrate the orchestra into a truly modern style selection, with them placed on ascending columns from the back of the stage. This gave us a stage that was more open and wider, and therefore unconstricted by having orchestra around it or in front of it. At the same time, we got to keep the attraction of having much of the instruments being played live. I really appreciate that the Albanians are making a clear effort to modernize this show while still maintaining those traditions. The song selection is improving year on year too, and while the top 3 this year would have all made excellent Eurovision entries, I also want to shout out OK by Giti, which I covered in my top 10 national final songs video, and really shows that the broadcaster is willing to take interesting and experimental risks. None of the improvements that have been made feel like a flash in the pan or something that might just appear one year and then disappear again. Because they're slow and incremental and being done step by step, it feels more sustainable and hopefully will continue moving in this direction. B tier is where it goes for now, but it's getting close to pushing to A, and maybe we'll see it there next year. Now we are moving on to Moldova, and if you've seen my video about my time there, you may understand why I find it exceptionally difficult to be impartial about this. I will ask you to allow me just a little sentimentality this time. Also, that is the video I'm probably proudest of on this channel, so if you're going to watch one other video of mine, please make it that one. When we arrived in the country in January and took a tour of the broadcaster's studios, the TV director, who was showing us around, told us about their plans for the selection. He talked about how things have scaled up and so on, and how they'd managed to do it on the same budget as the tiny selections we'd seen in years past. My thinking was pretty much, either this is visionary genius, or it's completely mental. The show we got showed that it was the former rather than the latter, because quite frankly, making something this good on that little budget is a miracle. This was such a radical rethink from a format that was so bad just 12 months ago that they withdrew from the contest entirely. It was in a proper modern arena for the first time, rather than a literally Soviet-era TV studio, and with way more buy-in from the domestic music industry than we've seen before. The camera angles were not perfect. The sound production could use a lot of improvement. But the fact that a broadcaster with a yearly budget less than what some broadcasters in Eurovision spend in one single day was able to pull something off like this is bordering on miraculous. It was a triumph built on the commitment and dedication of a small number of people who really believed in this project and did everything they could to make it happen. Being there and seeing it all come together was a genuinely emotional experience, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity to do that. A tier might seem generous, but given the circumstances, I really can't put it any lower. This was probably my personal highlight of the entire national final season, and I really deeply hope that we'll see this continue to develop in the years to come. After that, we're taking a hard turn to Poland. What on earth was this? A 1-hour pre-recorded show one evening wedged into the only available space in primetime before results were revealed the next day? Are you having a laugh? Last year, I was really happy with what Poland gave us in the form of one of their best selections in years, a range of really great songs, and an ambitious staging too. I excitedly and prematurely predicted that Poland could be the next first-time winner of Eurovision. On reflection, I'm not sure if I'd even put it in the top 5 for that category now. A field of weak, underwhelming songs, a terrible presentation and format, and widespread discontent among Polish fans and fan media tell you everything you need to know about this show. This is probably as close to a disaster without mitigation as any national selection this year. If you actively go out of your way to make the worst possible decision at every single stage, you would probably still end up with something better than this. It's the most F tier of all F tiers in this video. Romania returned to the contest this year as well, and with a national final to boot that was not terrible. To be honest, after their last effort in 2023, I was fearing the worst, but my worries were mostly unfounded. We had a genuinely entertaining show in here somewhere, with the winner, Alexandra Capitanescu, being the clear best of the bunch, but the runners-up hands were solid too, and I have a special place in my heart for the lovable disaster, Tilly Tilly Bomb. I do have to dock some pretty major points for the horrible jury-only voting system that transformed this into a eternal selection held live on television. If you can't trust the televote for corruption or integrity reasons, maybe run a demoscopic jury, where a small amount of members of the public are picked out at random to be broadly representative of the general split of the public by age, background, gender, and so on. Also, the production of this was not great. I'm sure this will improve if the show continues next year, but right now it's a problem. Overall, I'm going to be generous for this time around and say C tier. I nearly pushed it down further, but some tolerance is needed for a first time back in a long time. The same tolerance needs to be applied to the next country, but it's still worse than this one. That's Bulgaria. Who on earth decided that the best format would be to choose an artist, wait an entire month, and then do a 3-song national final for one artist to decide on what the Eurovision song should be? The frustrating thing is, this had such high interest from the public in Bulgaria and really made a splash there. So why not give these artists a chance to bring something new themselves and compete organically, rather than picking an artist and then pulling together 3 contrived built for Eurovision songs in a month? It made no sense to me at all. Luckily for Bulgaria, they have ended up with a really good singer with a really strong reputation domestically in the form of Dara, and a decent song out of it as well. That will not last into the future years with a format that has been proved over and over again to be totally outdated and unsuited to modern Eurovision. Make your lives easier. Do one show, let artists bring their own songs, and in the process, probably end up with better results. Bulgaria, I'm really glad you're back, but you don't need to be doing all this. It's going into D tier for now, because it does at least have the saving grace of having a really big amount of hype domestically, and to be fair, they did choose a good artist out of it. Doesn't mean the format doesn't suck, just means they got lucky. Next up is Lithuania, who have have been capably and reliably doing their thing for a few years now. I would say that in terms of quality, this is one of the most predictable and consistent in a good way. There's always something that's worth at least a second look, and the unnecessarily large number of semi-finals does eventually distill down to a final that's worth watching. They've also finally abolished the 3-song super final, so they get some extra credit for that. This edition was beleaguered somewhat by controversy, whether it was the lyrical content of Atakin's song being interpreted as a call for Ukrainian surrender, or Nora Blue's team managing to alienate just about everyone, or an attempt to cast literally millions of votes being foiled by the broadcaster. At the same time, the production was very solid. The songs were really good and presented a whole series of options that would have made excellent Eurovision entries. As well, for me at least, I thought the winner was outstanding. Even as Lithuanian public service media goes through a chaotic and tumultuous time, this show has stayed really solid and a safe bet to produce at least a couple of things that will end up on your playlist afterwards. For that reason, it's maintaining a high place here, and Lithuania is likely to maintain its string of good results since 2021. A tier is where this belongs, and I really hope in the next few years we do find the contest in Kaunas or Vilnius. Moving on now, next up is Croatia, and I have to be honest, I've never had a particularly strong attachment to this show, with the exception of Fengster and team. Shout out to you guys. The thing that occurs to me first with Dora is the way that I can't remember seeing many big upgrades from the studio version to the live, at least in the last few years. This year's winner, Lelek, was good live, but was better in studio. It's better not to discuss 7. Poison Cake was worse live, and even Rim Tim Taggy Dim, literally a contender to win Eurovision, was not good at Dora. At a certain point, you have to stop just looking at the artists and look at the show. Why does everyone just seem to fall a little short? This is, in my opinion, where the broadcaster should be focused, because something is not right here. You have a perfectly serviceable set of songs each year, but you're going to hit a limiting factor if you just can't deliver things live. At the moment, I'm not sure the show is fully able to do that. This is not fatal by itself, and to be honest, Croatia's record has been pretty good recently. Even if you include last year's Marko Bosniak debacle, he still came 12th in the semi-final. That's not that bad. I mean, they finished ahead of Belgium, which was meant to be sailing through with ease. In 2026, it feels like a safe bet that they're going to qualify again. Still, there's a lot to improve on the national selection level, so C tier is as high as I can realistically go for now. Portugal is next, and that's another one that has floundered a little bit in the face of the outrage at Israel's ongoing participation. 13 of the 16 participants said they wouldn't go to Eurovision if they won the show. Fortunately and conveniently for the broadcaster, none of them won, and the actual winners said that they would go to Eurovision from the very start. Portugal very much goes its own way, and as a result usually has a really musically interesting and unique show. That said, this year even staunch supporters of this show will admit that the quality and variety on offer was simply not as good as in past years. Last year we had Henker and Diana Villarino and Napa and Josh, and to be honest, I don't think anything from this year got particularly close to that level. The production and so on was similar to recent years as well, so with all that in mind, we're mostly working with overall song quality when deciding whether to keep the same rating as before or drop it. Unfortunately, my choice is to drop it into C tier, though given the circumstances, I'm not sure whether we can really blame them. Moving on to Ukraine now, and for the third time we are applying the "they are literally at war" clause, by which I mean the fact they can run any show at all is remarkable and deserves to be applauded. With that in mind, Ukrainians in my comments section in the last month have made it pretty clear that the show didn't match up to the standards they expected. The songs were fine. This wasn't a particularly remarkable year on that front in either a good or bad way. But there were some gems in here, of course. The narratives being told in Leleka, Jerry Hale and Monocate's performances in particular were really interesting to me, and I made an entire video about this that I encourage you to watch later. That said, live, everything came apart a little. The camera work was really shoddy. The production was really poor. Everything just felt a little slapdash and half-baked, which isn't something I've felt about Vidbeer previously. I can't really blame the Ukrainians for this, given that there are, well, much more pressing concerns right now. But this was below what Ukrainians seem to typically expect of their national selection, and below what Eurovision fans have come to expect as well. There are still strong elements here, of course. Having Jamala steering the ship on this show is a blessing in many ways, because she knows what she's doing and she has a creative vision in a way that most countries don't really. But the production was a concern and it needs to be addressed. Given the context, it's still A tier for me, and it's inspiring that any show is possible. I just really hope we see improvement next year. Estonia is next, and this one hurts more than most. Let's start with the good. In terms of song selection, Estilal was really good this year. There was a whole bunch of different options that I would have been very happy with, across a range of genres as well. For a country the size of Estonia, it was a really encouraging field. That said, there are problems with this show, and the victory of Vanilla Ninja is a symptom rather than a cause of this. performance. Every single upbeat song, in fact, any song with any energy at all, fell totally flat live, with the possible exception of the bizarre but entertaining Stig Rasta and Victor Krona cowboy nonsense. The reasons why so many people fell flat were very similar across each case. Poorly mixed vocals, an audience that didn't get into it at all, though the Eesti Laul crowd in Estonia is notorious for being dead, and slow, sluggish camera work that all combined together to sap the energy from every single performance on stage, no matter how it felt in the room. Nobody connected with the audience on television, and ultimately that left victory to be decided on name alone. This is not satisfactory. Even in a small market with limited resources, this is not satisfactory, especially when the show has been running for more than 20 years. There is a standard that needs to be met, in my opinion, on this front that just wasn't this year. For that reason, despite the clear strength on the song selection side, I can't realistically give this a high grade if the live execution is just not there right now. For that reason, I'm going to put Estonia in C tier this year. These problems are definitely fixable, and hopefully we'll see something better next time around. Spain is next, and though they aren't in Eurovision this year, I want to take the opportunity to give Benidorm Fest its flowers. This year, the staging in particular for almost every song was superb, with clear, vibrant, and interesting concepts. Mata Ora by Rosalinda Galan is one of the best one-shot performances that I've ever seen, and I hope it wins some awards somewhere. The songs were the most relevant to the Spanish music scene that we've seen in the history of this show, at least in the last few years as well. It's such a shame that this has taken place outside of the Eurovision ecosystem, because Spanish fans and Spain are very much still part of this family. So this is staying on this list and it's going into A tier. Hopefully in future years we'll see Spain in Eurovision again, and Benidorm Fest once again being a selection process for the contest as well as a national celebration. Spain, we miss you very much. Greece is next, and to the Greek fans, I'm really glad we've had a bit of a chance to kiss and make up after last year. This was so much better than last effort, because last time we had a slow, oddly formatted show that took 40 minutes to get to song 1, and some of the dodgiest hosting and production that we saw in the entire year. This year, it was slicker. The show moved along at least a little faster, and to be honest, the song quality was significantly better too, at least at the top end. Good job Nikki's unfortunate live performance aside, we probably had 4 viable Eurovision packages in the form of him, Evangelia, Marceau, and Aquilas. I will say that the semi-finals felt a bit unnecessary. You had a lot of slop that wasn't really up to the standard. Those were all filtered out, and we got a decent final for sure, but you could have just saved time and money by just having 12 or 14 finalists and just a single show. Overall, this worked well, and I'm going to make it a high-end B tier at the minute. Having come from the depths of hell last year, it is still a little rickety, but there has been so much progress, and hopefully next year will be even better. Next up is Sweden. The bar is sky high for them, and it's a bar that, in the eyes of the Swedish press, wasn't met this year. The reviews in the tabloids totally trashed the show and the lineup of songs that ended up in the final. On some levels, I do agree with the criticism. Melodifestivalen does need a refresh when it comes to how adventurous the music that gets into the show and into the final is. At the moment, way too much of it is hanging onto a lot of the stereotypical tropes and styles that have been associated with this competition for a while now. At the same time, I think we have to objectively look at this show in the context of all of the national selections in Europe. It is objectively the best produced and staged of all, with the possible exception of Finland. It certainly has the most technically complex production, the biggest audience as a proportion of the country, and one of the biggest cultural impacts. In some ways, it's a testament to how good SVT are at the fundamentals of running a show like this, that they made a set of songs that didn't really set anyone alight when they came out, still look and sound really good when the final came. Notwithstanding the criticism of the songs, this is very much still a show that knows how to do almost everything in the most slick way possible, and it's not going to waste our time like the Austrians and others did. For that reason, A tier is where it's going, but let's please see a little more variation next year. Luxembourg is next, and to be honest, I'm not really a huge fan of this national selection. They did produce one really good song this year in the form of Eye to Eye by Shirakuro, but nothing else really held up in my opinion. We then had my arch enemy, the super final format, which inexplicably the aforementioned best song didn't even make it to. All of this came together to make a 3-hour-long show for 6 songs. 6! Don't take the piss. This was the unnecessarily dragging things out final boss of this Eurovision season. I genuinely don't understand how they made it this long. The last song finished after 1 hour, and after that, for a show with 6 songs, you should get a 45-minute timer to get your intervals on and off and then do results. After those 45 minutes, you should be cut off because you've taken too long. The results should be be immediately revealed and everyone goes home. There is no need for it to be any longer. The song selection mechanism for this show doesn't work, the overall quality declined for the second time in a row, and then on the night itself, 3 precious hours of our lives that we'll never get back were wasted, for a grand total of 15 minutes of competing song time. D tier is where this is going, and it was only saved from F because Shirakuro showed up and actually delivered. 3 selections left, and the first of those is Malta. I have to say, overall, I was quite impressed by some of the songs this year. It's obligatory for me to mention the ultimate legend that is Janis, but both Aiden and Matt Black really delivered here, and as a top 2, I was really happy with it. Hopefully Matt Black will keep trying because he's getting closer and closer to Eurovision each and every time. It's easy to forget that Malta is an island of a few 100,000 people. To produce a good standard national final with reasonably good production like this is a really impressive feat. It didn't have the most outstanding lineup of all, sure. It wasn't produced perfectly, and it did take way too long to get to the end of the show. But it was functional, it worked, and for that I have to respect it. I wasn't sure between B tier and C tier, but ultimately I've decided to go with B by a whisker. Malta can thank Janis for securing that upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, Montenegro is the second to last one here. For Vladana Vucinic, I was not familiar with your game. The set of songs in Montesong this year caused actual excitement before the show, and it produced the first real shot for the country at qualifying in a long time. Nova Zora and Temperatura were the clear standouts and the songs I'd most likely go to listen again, but I have to all shout out the iconic and glorious and ridiculous sideshows we had here. Lara Baltic and Rhythm Boy is an ultimate disaster bop, and Stefan's Nedekodirana gave us absolutely nothing in exactly the right way, and bagged 12 points from Škodra Elektronika in the process. There are still a lot of problems here. This selection was filmed in a cupboard, there were dead pixels on the LED screens, and the production was... But it worked, and it worked a hell of a lot better than it did last year. The effort and care put into this is clear to see, and as a result, you do find yourself rooting for Montenegro a little bit. I really hope that this does get rewarded with a qualification to help encourage them to grow this selection further in future years. For now, it gets a C tier, but even that is a success and a dramatic improvement considering where we've come from. Now we're on to the final national selection, and once again, sitting at the very top of the tree is Finland. This was my number 1 in 2023, my number 1 in 2025, and it's only gotten stronger since then. Every single song in this show was staged superbly. The arena looked and sounded amazing. The production took a massive step forward since last time out. The artists all ended up with massive hits that took over the charts in Finland after the show. The song that came last in this selection was good enough to finish in the top 3 basically anywhere else. At the moment, Finland is literally doing everything right. I struggle to find even one thing that I'd drastically change about this show. This is the only selection that has built to a world-class level from nothing in the last 5 to 10 years. And to be honest, right now they are running rings around everybody else. Nobody can claim the level of consistency, quality and execution that Finland has mastered, built on in-house music, video, costume and stage design. Every delegation in Europe should be booking Zoom meetings with Yle and begging them for their secrets. It's S tier once again, and it is well and truly clear of the chasing pack this time around. With that, we've reached the end of this video and another whistle-stop tour of Europe. Make sure you subscribe as we've got a very special video next Friday with one of this year's Eurovision artists, and there's lots more to come too throughout the rest of Eurovision season and onto the contest proper in May. I'll look forward to seeing you there, but for now, take care and I'll see you again very soon.